welcome back. Since our last video, I have abandoned using these. Yesterday, I broke out my new spool gun here. This is the Eastwood MiG 175. It came with the spool gun. I'm really glad I have this because I'm not great at TIG welding. This thing is the deal. It works really well. I used it yesterday after I practiced with it just to do these tack welds, and everything went really easy. You can see some of them have a really nice flow out to them. I'm going to be very happy with the finished product on this. I mean, it's the first time I've ever welded aluminum. You can see here, this is the start of the driver's side of the manifold. What we're going to do here is I'm going to pie cut this after I oval everything out, because you can see this right there, that oval piece is the same as this large 4-inch pipe. I've got a piece, you can see it's very wide up top and very skinny at the bottom, so this part bends quite easily. The next steps I'm working on here, I've got out the grinder and I'm grinding the tops of these, because as you go to stick this in here, it doesn't really, I mean, it's close, you know, but it doesn't go in. So it just needs a little trimming in a few spots. And I've been going around, you can see some marks here with paint that I marked that I needed to take a little extra off there, and a little extra off there. And you can see how high up that line is to show me depth. I can actually get that in that far. So when I go to weld these in, I'm going to get a really nice transition into the manifold. I mean, like, as good as OEM. The game plan here is I have two of these that I have cut on an angle, so that the plan is to aim them together like this, and then once that gets aimed together and this one is machined out as well as the other one, I will then take this and tack that into place in the appropriate spot. I'll have to go back and fill, you know, the triangle in and the underneath. That'll all get filled in later with just, you know, pieces of aluminum. But the main thing that I need to do is once that's on there like this, I'm going to take another pie cut, because right now this is still a bit high. Once we get one more pie cut on there, that'll direct us down here, and then I can put a very large piece of that 4-inch log over there. You can see I got the other side of the manifold fabricated here. So all we have to do now is sneak it down this way so we clear the supercharger. So I need a piece that's going to come down on an angle to about here, and then we're going to straighten her out, and we're going to go right underneath of that supercharger body. If I end up having to grind maybe a couple of these cooling fins off, I think I'll be all right, because this charger is most likely going to be sticking out from under the hood. So I don't think that cooling is going to be an issue. That and the air-to-water intercooler, you know, I think it's going to be sufficient. Everything looks to have pretty good penetration. I'm going to have to go in and adapt this for the Subaru throttle body sooner or later. That's going to involve closing this corner off. I believe this was the IAC, idle air control valve, would breathe right through this side here on the Ford. I don't need that though, because I have the drive-by-wire throttle body. So what it does is it just opens like 3 to 5%, just enough to idle. So you don't actually need an air control valve. It's all in the tune. So you can see the two ends there. This is one end that what I did is I welded the inside and the outside of these. That's not all weld built up there. I actually have a triangle of this intercooler piping that's cut out to fit right in here, as well as underneath on this spot. This is just weld, but what I did is I covered that over on the top after I put it on, so that I would have lots of strength, because this is 1/4 inch, this is like 1.6 millimeter. So by doing that, I gave it some strength here in the transition, and I'm not the greatest aluminum welder. This is the first time I'm doing it, so I wanted to make sure I had lots of penetration, so I stacked some of the welds. I know that I don't have any leaks here anywhere. I had to finish chopping this off from the TGV motor so that I can get in there, grind the weld down a little bit, and just examine it, make sure that there's no holes, no pinholes or anything like that. This is what it looked like after I welded the inside and the outside to make sure that it is completely sealed. By welding the inside, I get this weld buildup here that is going to cause a little bit of an obstruction. It's probably not any worse than the stock manifold, but I wanted a smoother transition. I've been working with some carbide burrs here. These things are great. When I first started using it, I didn't know that when you're using these on aluminum, they chunk up really fast. Like, I mean, in 30 seconds, you're gonna end up in about 30 seconds completely clogging this bit to where it just looks like a big hunk of aluminum. And at that point, it doesn't spit out any more shavings, which is what you need to do to really cut. What I did is I went online and I started reading, and there was people saying that they could use wax and all this other stuff, WD-40. I've just been dipping it. I've really just been taking this. This is the other burr that I've been using, and I dip it in the water. I use it for about 30, 40 seconds. I dip it again, and it has not clogged up on me one more time since. It took me about an hour and a half, 2 hours just to knock some of this off because I had to keep cleaning the carbide burr out. And then I kept going back to this stone piece, which is really more of a finishing piece, but it was working faster than the carbide burr. But this, I think you'll really like. I have less time into this than the other one, and it is beautiful. These are really good-looking transitions. There's a couple spots that I still want to take a little bit off of. You can see there's a couple of, they almost look like casting marks, but they're the welds that are coming through from here. I just want to make sure that's a little smoother. Right here, I feel like there's a little high spot, and we're just going to work on that a little bit and get everything as round as we can. And then I'm going to go in there with a flapper disc and give everything just like a semi-polish. Last time you guys saw what we had going on down here, we had this piece, but it stopped right there. I have since put on this other section. The insides of these, take a look down here, have been completely ported. I built up some weld on the outside where I needed to, because this part here is actually some thin metal with a lot of weld built up so that I could get some real strength in there. So the only spots that are actually thin is from here to here. I know these aren't the greatest looking welds on the outside, but what I was going for was something that on the inside looked like a stock ported cast manifold. And that's pretty decent in there. I can live with that. Right here you can see this is where we're going to stick this in here just like that. You can see I've already fish mouthed it, and that was painted from the inside of the piece. So that is actually the size I want to take it to for maximum flow. I could leave a little bit of a lip in there and then go back and machine that through the hole with my grinder that I've been using throughout the process. This thing's a little rough looking on the outside, I know, but on the inside, I assure you, it looks like a stock cast manifold that was cut open and ported. Probably took a 1/16 off everywhere so that this wasn't such a thick material to weld. And what I did is just as I went along, I just kept porting every piece. When it got into this piece, this is the only one that is still the same inside piece. All I did was polish that with a brush. And then when it came down to it, there was just this last line. And I made sure that the way that they were going to be welded in place together with the manifold tightened down on both sides, that it was a perfect coming from this direction, this going in that direction. There's no lip to be seen. If it was going to go this way, there'd be a lip about that big. But going this way, it skips right over it, because this is big, a little bit bigger because it was ported out and this wasn't. So that actually really worked out to my advantage on the very last piece. The next step tomorrow is going to be to cut this hole out, get everything cleaned up, get all this out of here, and when we get that welded on, that's going to put me really close right here. So we're going to end up actually shaving off just a little bit so that when I put a coupler on here, I don't have issues with the clamp right there. I mean, obviously I'll just put it over on this side, but it was really tight. Like, I only had about this much clearance, and that is about the thickness of a coupler. So I don't want it to chatter on the mount or anything. Also, you can see there's a mark here and there's another one just like it on the bottom. These are the spots where it's extremely close to the supercharger. Like this pipe was quite a stretch to get in there. The manifold almost completed. I just put this on there. This is a 3-inch outlet with a bead roll on it. The inside needs to be ported out. I had a little bit of a gap, and I went back and I double welded everything just to be sure. I laid a tight bead on the inside, and then I did a wider one over it so that I knew that I penetrated the thin pipe here and again here, so that I have a kind of a double seal going around there. I'm going to grind that down flush a little bit. The next step on this, after I port that and just check the inside for spatter to make sure that nothing got in there. I don't want anything coming loose later. We're going to run just like a Dremel through there with a sanding flap. But the next step after that is going to be to just give this thing a nice sanding. I'm going to coat it all in. I have this, which is basically a putty. I'm going to spread that on there kind of like Bondo or JB Weld, except this actually, as close to turning into metal as it can, it does. When you go to sand it down, it looks exactly like aluminum. You can tap it, drill it, pretty much anything you want. It's almost as strong as the actual metal itself. You can see here, this manifold is massive in comparison to the old one. The inside runners here are about the same, but they're much shorter on this, which is going to be higher revving, more horsepower. I'll lose a little torque, but I'm putting a supercharger on it, so I'm pretty much going to get all that back. Manifold design isn't that important. I thought about doing, I was going to put a tank here and a tank over there because I saw some manifold design videos, but I ended up doing this because it turns out that with the way the firing order is, the cylinders would fight each other for air, the way the plenum is that way, and it just won't work with the Subaru layout. So you need to have a center plenum if you're going to do that, or some kind of an X plenum, which would just be ridiculously over-engineered for something that's not naturally aspirated. But yeah, you can see it's a pretty decent upgrade. It's about 10 millimeters bigger for the inlet, and the throttle body will not be there. That's why that's just a bead rolled pipe. My throttle body is actually going to be on the inlet of the supercharger. It's going to go right on there. So I actually have to take this. One of the next projects is going to be to modify the inlet on that to make it a round hole. And then I'm going to take my drive-by wire throttle body, and we're going to adapt that there.
Let me tell you about a girl I know, twice as scandalous as she'll ever show. How you sitting down, are you at the spot? Story time's about to get hot. Dated her for a week or two. Everything was so brand new, and things went awry when another guy answered the phone when I called her that night. He said she wasn't there. But in the back I could hear her just saying, tell him that I am not at home. It gets better still, but for now we got to chill. Breaking to the chorus, how could she ignore this? Why must you be this way? Why'd you have to go and do me wrong? Why must you be this way? Girl, I wish I never met you. Tell me why must you be this way? Now I'm sitting here all alone. Why, baby, why you gotta be this way? Now that it's over, on with the show. Everybody knows a girl like I know. I used to sitting down, if you're not, please do, cause this girl's about to get rude. Calls me up in a day or two, says come to G's and I will bring you stuff for you. Again things went awry, said she had another guy. Said I know I heard you in the background. She said he would be there. When I got there I would see him. When I got there I saw he was a friend of mine. It gets better still, but for now we got to chill. Breaking to the chorus. could she ignore this? Why must you